Hey guys, Arm&Gun here, today with some Bullpups, which is super exciting because I love Bullpups. And we're going to talk about the history of these things insofar as the very first noted example of a Bullpup style of rifle. Probably before that, I should tell you what actually constitutes a Bullpup rifle. And then we're going to try and dig down into where the term Bullpup came from, because I did some research, I did some digging, and I might have found out why. We're going to get to that. And also going to discuss as we go a couple of major pros and cons with the Bullpup rifles, how some of that's changed and gotten better as time has gone on. For that, I've also got a trusty FN AR-15 here for compare contrast. I also did do a Bullpups versus ARs video a little while back, so I don't want to spend too much time on the pros and cons and comparisons, but we're gonna do some of that. And just to give you guys the basics or the main points. Also going to roll in some shooting videos from each of these guns, with the exception of this guy. I haven't filmed this guy shooting on camera yet, but we will do that. But I'll get some shooting videos of these things in here, and then finally I'll close maybe with a couple of my own opinions, because I always do that anyways. So, and then of course the bonus gun. There's always a bonus gun, and we will get to that. So without further ado, let's jump out. Visual quality isn't super amazing, but at least you guys can see everything, so we're gonna go with that for now. So just to jump in, first things first, terminology, because it's really important that we clarify what we're talking about here. So Bullpups, what constitutes a Bullpup? Well, basically it means when the action is behind the trigger group, and specifically what I mean by the action is like the action of feeding. So a round being stripped off the magazine and fed into the chamber. That happens behind the trigger group. And that's the case with all these guns. They're not just exotic, funky looking guns. That is how they're designed, and that was what constitutes them as a Bullpup. So basically that's almost always going to require the magazine to be fully, or in part, with the case of the PS90, be behind the trigger group. The only reason I say in part is because this one is so long, and its placement means that it stretches out to the front of the gun anyways. But quite cool nonetheless. All right, so history of this thing. How did this thing originate? Where did it start? What was the birthplace of the Bullpup? Well, for that, we got to go all the way back to year 1901. And some British dude wasn't really satisfied with his Lee Enfield. He's like, you know what? This thing can be better. Namely, it can be shorter. So what he did was, well, he literally came up with the Bullpup. And again, keep in mind, this was decades before the actual term Bullpup is claimed to have originated. So at this point in time, this was just a funky rifle. This was just an exotic, funky looking rifle. And even more so, I think in 1901, there weren't many guns like this around. It was definitely wooden, and it was definitely not semi-automatic. It was a bolt action rifle. So the birth of this was a bolt gun, which is pretty cool. And again, it faced off against the Lee Enfield. So he crammed a number of rounds of 303 British, I'm not sure if it was 7, 8, or 9 rounds, crammed it into the stock portion behind the trigger group, right? And again, they ran the bolt. I'm not sure. The gun was plagued with poorer controls, and that's why it never did take off. But if you want, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, other than the fact that Ian's got a video on it. It's called the Thornbury Victorian Carbine. So go look that up if you want to learn more about that funky thing. But that's cool. 1901, some British dude, bolt gun, this thing is born. So that's his great-great-great-grandfather. Anyways, fast forward a couple decades, and we're once again in Britain. And this is where I did some digging on the web, and I'm not 100% sure of the authenticity of this, because it was just on a forum. But of all the things I've seen on the forums, this is the most plausible thing. Like, I mean, guys were saying like, oh, there was bulldogs were popular in Britain in the early 1900s, or relatively, and the short guns, they just kind of looked like a snubby bulldog, so that's probably how it got the name. And I'm kind of scratching my head thinking like, that doesn't hold a lot of weight. Anyways, this idea might not either though, but at least it was cooler, and I liked it. So we're gonna go with it for this video. The story was that there was a British project that was called Project Bullpup. And it was just a random code name assigned to this task of finding a good combination for rifle and ammunition combinations. So they're going out there and experimenting with different things, trying to find out what's going to be a good, what's going to work really well together. And they ended up with the EM2, the British EM2 rifle, which is one of the earliest and most notable examples of a modern bullpup rifle, or I guess a somewhat traditional bullpup rifle. And that was chambered in 7mm. So that was what they came up with. And then because that gun was so strange, like just Google an EM2, it's different. It's an exotic, funky looking rifle. And due to the nature of it being called Project Bullpup, they just referred to later variations as bullpup style rifles, you know, in referring to that project, and eventually just became synonymous with bullpup, and they just ran with it. So that's the story I read. I went then to Google Project Bullpup, and I couldn't find anything on the web about it. Maybe you'll have more luck than me, but I found that super interesting anyways, and that's what I'm going with. And then boom, the AUG appeared out of nowhere after like 30 years, after the EM2. Anyways, the AUG probably being the most iconic bullpup ever, and that was back in the 1970s. So that's crazy. That's literally crazy. To this day, the Steyr AUG is still so reputable, well-known, used in a lot of militaries. I think like 20 militaries are used it or something like that. Crazy. And I got a chance to hold one, handle one back last year. Awesome. They're just amazing guns. They're so well balanced. They're actually quite light, really pointable, and great ergs. So I'm excited to, actually, this is a cool announcement here. I mentioned this a couple times before, but I've officially created a media company for firearms, and that's really going to open a lot of doors for what I get access to on this channel, what I can do with guns on this channel. So I'm really looking forward to that and the possibilities that's going to bring over this year. So definitely stay tuned. It's been a wild ride the last 5 or 6 months I've been doing this. I can't believe that, I started out with a couple hundred subscribers just from having this thing as like my listed YouTube page from my Instagram account, which, by the way, here, posting guns for years, bullpups 2 years ago, boom. So that was a picture from again, a couple of years ago. A lot of those guns have disappeared, though the best ones have remained. And that's what this channel is about, showing you guys some good knowledge on a lot of interesting guns, kind of focusing on military, high-end tactical, and modern exotics, things like that. I've definitely got some cool guns that date back to World War II, and some other really cool guns that a buddy of mine has that I'll feature on this channel that are really just super, like, basically think Ian McCullum. The really forgotten, cool, turn-of-the-century stuff. So definitely stay tuned, and the best way to do that is to subscribe, of course. So like, subscribe, share, comment, do all the things. Check out my Instagram because that's also fun. I post there. I've been there for like 3 years, so it's a bit bigger. It's just been cool guns every day for 3 years. So go check that out as well. And yeah, I'm just excited to grow, and I'm excited for your help in doing so. We're gonna keep doing more shooting. This 2020, I have vowed, no, I've what's the word for the resolve to do more shooting. So we're going to do a lot more of that this year. We're going to get some, through the scope action as well. And it's just going to be a jolly good time. So on that note, let's start cycling through these guns really quickly, and I'll give you a bit of a shootout. So starting with the Tar-21, chambered in the venerable 5.56, same, by the way, as the FN AR-15, good old-fashioned 223 5.56 cartridge. Cue the footage. Overall, pretty sweet system. I'm a big fan. So those were shots from one of the very first YouTube videos, shooting videos I ever did. So actually, on that note, we're going in this week into Gun of the Week number 36, which is going to be pretty cool. We're going to feature the Tar-21. Going to take a fresh look at shooting the thing. We're going to take it apart, do all that kind of fun stuff. So that's just giving it away. This is going to be the gun for next week. And then, of course, the following week will be another gun and another gun. But these guns, you'll be happy to know, are already out there. You can learn a ton about them on my channel, the FN Ps90 and the GM6 Lynx. Let's shoot this big beast. Also, the coolest thing this gun does, right there. Unbelievably cool. All right, let's shoot it. Oh, I took it off. The board is gone. Woo! Okay. All right. Holy crap. So yeah, this thing is a wild freaking ride. 50 BMG, that's this big bloke right here. That thing will get you places. So that's the GM6 Lynx topped off with a zero compromise optic. This thing is awesome. That's these guys right here. If you're in Canada, check out their distributor, Go Big Tactical. That's just a quick plug to those guys because Tom here helps me out quite a bit. And zero compromise are just freaking awesome optics. So, the Boberg XR9-L, this thing I haven't shot yet. We will be shooting it eventually. It's super cool though, and the cool thing is that it's got this little lifter. Well, okay, the coolest thing I'm going to show you right now is that the 9mm gets loaded in backwards. Can you believe that? That's the magazine, and that's how it goes into the gun. A little claw comes down, plucks the round out of the back. It gets lifted up and shoved into the barrel, and then you shoot the thing, which is pretty freaking cool. So that's this gun. And then also right into the PS90 chambered in 5.7 by 28. A nice little tiny miniature 5.56 round. Kind of cool. 5.56, 5.57 by 28 millimeter long cartridge. Neat stuff. PS90, just, I love this thing. I love this thing. Let's shoot it. Stick her back in. Pop her down and charge it up. And we're good for one more. And guys, that wraps it up for our shooting videos. Really quickly, the most important pro of this gun is literally you can take a gun. I'm going to actually demonstrate this with the Tar-21. You can take a Tar-21 with this barrel is close to 20 inches long, and you can take this AR-15 FN with also a 20-inch long barrel. That's the benefit of a bullpup. Without sacrificing any barrel length, you take and therefore, you know, the round's velocity and penetration power, you know, those types of things, the ballistics. Without sacrificing any of that, you get a much shorter package, which is much more maneuverable and better suited for close quarter combat situations. This gun also will just prove clear as I've now handled it. I love this thing. This thing is so freaking cool. The other big thing with bullpups, is the balance. The weight distribution is much more kind of rear focused, so you can hold it, and that can get, you know, supported by your shoulder. You can hold this thing like all day long, shoot one-handed accurately and sturdily. It's just great. I really dig it. And the trade-offs, well, the trade-offs are typically the ergs. Early bullpups were typically very clunky, very awkward, not at all conducive to left-hand shooters or shooting offhand, as warfare has kind of changed, and now we're, you know, everyone's focused on like counterterrorism, tactical, you know, tactics, all that kind of stuff. Running in around tight quarters, close quarters combat, shooting offhand has become a very significant aspect of those type of engagements. And that's why there's been a huge shift to ambidextrous guns. Also because lefties are cool too, and we believe in equal rights. So lefties, empower the lefties. I'm right-handed, but I'm also for the left guy. Unless it's politics. I'm not going to get very political on this channel, but I'm gonna let that one fly. Anyways, that was the case with older bullpups, but now as bullpups have progressed and have gotten more modern, people have really started paying attention to ergonomics. The last few, you know, guns that have come out have been awesome. They've been really ergonomically friendly to shoot. The way they eject is, you know, forward or down. You know, PS90, this thing, they've been doing this for 30 freaking years. They've been shooting, you know, ambidextrous gun, shooting down. Trigger still isn't very good. We'll talk about that in a second, but hey, at least they're good to shoot. Left hand, right hand, you're good to go. So that's going to be now the norm for bullpups going into the 21st century, essentially. And the other thing that's kind of a drawback, though, is the trigger. And the trigger just sucks. Okay, in general, as a rule of thumb, bullpup triggers are crappy, and that's because the trigger doesn't strike a hammer that's right here. The trigger strikes a hammer that's behind the action, right? So that's going to be back here somewhere. So how do you connect this and this? Well, with some type of linkage. And that means more parts with more tolerance, introducing more tolerances, and that just equals more slop, more room for error. And that's typically why bullpups really have a lot more, mushy, creepy, indiscernible breaks, and it's not as good. Unless you're Geisley. Because Geisley, guys, he's a freaking wizard. And he designed the Super Sabra for the Tavor, and check this thing out. Take up, boom. Like competition AR trigger. Just unbelievable. Anyways, that's kind of the show for today, guys. As I mentioned, we're going to do more shooting soon. I owe you guys another Lynx shooting video pretty soon. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out, because I shot this thing one-handed. That was a challenge. A challenge brought up to me to do for a video, and I did it. And not many of you guys have seen it yet, so you guys should go and watch that, because it was fun, and maybe I did it, maybe I shot my foot off. You don't know until you see it. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to limp over to my bonus gun, which was actually sitting over here in the corner for a very long time, I realized. But I bet you didn't know what it was. But here you go. If you were right, congratulations, you win nothing. It's a SIG Patrol. SIG Virtus Patrol. I think it's a Patrol. SIG Virtus. This thing, the cool thing about this thing, though, is that it's chambered in 300 blackout, and it's a 16-inch. So if you're shooting supers out of this thing, you've basically got yourselves an AK-47, which is pretty cool ballistically. I'm speaking, of course. And again, we're clear there, and then we're just gonna use our handy dandy Phase 5 bolt release to drop that bolt, which is super slick. Trigger, actually really nice. I believe this is their Matchlight Duo trigger. It is a nice trigger. Got their EOTech on top, little foldy boy, the magnifier there. Just a cool gun. I haven't done a video series on this thing yet, though I will soon. And I will also be shooting my Rattler very soon as well. I'm just going to bust that out. Give me one quick second. Oh, it's such a cool little gun. Look at this thing. I love it. Oh, but they didn't do the ambi bolt release, so these Phase 5 little feature guys here, they work actually pretty good. Also, factory charging handles below. This would be a factory one. I don't know why SIG thought this was acceptable. Even like almost all their stocks have a hinge here, and it's a knuckle dragger, so they shouldn't do it. You should upgrade it. I've got another one coming on the way, and both these magazines, both these guns are 300 blackout, obviously, and these magazines by Crossmag are 10 rounders for your band states, and they run 5.56 and 300 blackout magically. So that's awesome, and that's the show for today, guys. Thanks a ton. Catch you next time. And